Hey everyone, it's Keith with another episode of our CIO Wisdom Share. Today I'm really excited to be joined with Dr. Simeon Ananou. He's the Chief Information Officer from University of Vermont, and we're going to be talking about how digital transformation and technologies are evolving and how that may affect our education system. So this question is coming more from a father than it is some guy doing an interview with you. I look at these new technologies, right? Like you got collaboration, you got mobile that you talked about. You talk about AI machine learning, right? And how it's going to be utilized in with our, with students and just in general. How I'm already concerned as a dad about the distance between my kids and the relationships they have with other people. How can you embrace the new technologies to come up, but still kind of maintain the humanity of the relationships that people have with each other, with teachers, with mentors, with bosses?
That's an excellent question. As CIOs, we continue to think about the digital agenda, the digital transformation on our campuses. But first and foremost, we also need to remember that we are members of a community, whether it is our campus community or the community of our town, our city, our states, and then the global community. So this notion of humanity is one that we should not lose sight of. And in fact, a few years ago, a co-author of mine and myself, we thought about this notion of humanity and asked ourselves, what does it actually mean? And we've divided humanity, at least for the sake of having a framework, academic framework, or a framework that can be easily distilled and understood by many. We've divided it into four dimensions of humanity. One being cognitive, the other one is social, the third one is emotional, and the fourth one is ethical. And I'll briefly tell you what we're thinking here. I have come to enjoy my role as a CIO. Again, as I said earlier, being a CIO is one of the most fascinating roles because we work in technology. But the flip side is to recognize that you also have to retain the interpersonal relationships and be able to interact with human beings to understand where they're coming from. And cognitively, one may argue that our technologies today allow us to do things much faster, but we can also pause to realize and maybe ask ourselves how much of our cognitive abilities we are still able to use fully, and asking ourselves whether we are relinquishing part of our cognitive prowess just to the device that is in our hands. So that is a place where I often encourage faculty or even parents. I encourage folks to continue to challenge their own minds and retain this sense of critical thinking. I now call it the digital thinking. Everything that you see, don't just judge it at face value. Critique it and ask how real it is. And do more research to understand the validity of the topic, the subject, or whatever matter it is that you're facing, so that you continue to exercise your personal and human cognitive abilities. Then the second part is our social abilities, our interactions. Unfortunately, with the pandemic, social distancing can only be accomplished through many of our virtual devices and virtual tools and interactions. But many of us, remain hopeful that before too long, as we all get vaccinated, we will reduce our social distancing to a much shorter distance between individuals. And we may actually, with masking and other precautions, we might be able to once again, get back into a certain dimension of how human beings get to see each other, how we get to see the facial expression of another individual to really understand where the person is coming from, to establish that notion of trust, which is very, very important. So socially, it's important for us to use our technologies, but also to pause and remember that there's a human element that we need to nurture, and even the sense of touch and our senses, how we can use those to be able to flourish as a society. So the cognitive and social, I think they're also connected to the emotional aspect of how technology is also impacting our emotions. We are in an era where everyone can write something and can post it very quickly on social media or other sources on the net or through our various mobile apps. And whatever we post has consequences, good or bad consequences. So in this era where we have so much, in fact, I call it a deluge of information, we have so much coming at us and so much being produced so fast, we have to be able to regulate our emotions, how we react to what we see, and how we react before we respond to something else that we've just encountered on the web or on the net, on social media. That is another place where emotional regulation is going to be more important, more so than ever. The last place where I think it's also important for us as human beings to pay very close attention is our ethical use of the devices that we have at our disposal. While it may be inappropriate, right now it is inappropriate for human beings to break the laws in many places. And we also know that if you do certain things, if you were to walk around and you physically assault someone, there are witnesses who may actually see it. And even you, as a human being, you may feel a sense of remorse. But somehow it feels like in the digital world, we may be, or human beings may be more prone to saying things that can hurt others emotionally, more so than what they may be able to do in the physical sense. So that's the fourth dimension where we have to be very careful as to what we're saying because words have power. Words are very powerful. How we're directing our words as vectors to others and how we also receive those vectors from others. So, with all that being said, pieces of advice that I will offer to the listeners here. One is regulate how much time you spend on screen. And number two, find time to interact with human beings, not just virtually. And continue to think about what your own personal ethical compass is and how you may stick to that ethical compass, whether you were in the physical world or in the digital world.
Thank you. Are you fearful we're at risk of losing parts of our humanity?
Yes, we could use part of our humanity if we continue to delegate or relegate all of these important things that, especially the emotional aspect, if we relegate all of them to the devices that we have at our disposal. I would tell parents to find time to still sit down and have dinner with your children. I will encourage leaders in many organizations to find ways to engage their employees on a personal level, not just in a digital way, so that at the end of the day, we are able to engage that deeper side of everyone and to allow people to feel valued in a very genuine and very sincere sense, and not just relying on devices, whether it's the ding or the buzz or the notification of the device. Take time to reflect on that next email before you respond, as opposed to just reacting to the notification that the email has brought to you. Too often, we hear colleagues or friends or family regret that maybe they pushed the send button too quickly. So before you do that again, just pause and ask if you will still be happy with that email or response or whatever posting that is leaving your mailbox or your device. And I'll add one more thing. Archaeological searches today show us what our ancestors were doing many, many generations ago. And I believe that whatever we're doing today is going to be etched digitally and will remain, and the future generations will know all of us as to how we behaved or what we said during our time. So we need to be thinking about regulating ourselves and how we want the future generations to know us and what we want them to think of us and the legacy that we want to leave for the future generations.
Okay, Dr. Nana, thank you very much for sharing today. We're tight on time, so I need to let it go there, but thank you for sharing your thoughts.
Keith, thank you so much for having me. It's been a great pleasure. I hope the insights of some of the information that I was able to share here will benefit many within the IT community and even beyond. We're very pleased and very happy with what we're doing here at UVM. I spoke about community extensively. UVM is a community, and that sense of community is one that we have been able to retain even throughout the pandemic. And for those who are listening, I will say that we're very pleased with the fact that the UVM resumed classes, in-person classes in the fall and even now in the spring. And in the fall, we're able to use technologies coupled with human interactions to have less than 100 positive cases of COVID-19 on our campus. So thank you.
That's very refreshing to hear. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hope you heard a few things that triggered some new thinking for you. We do these conversations on IT topics weekly, so please feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel. That way you get updates on new content, as well as you can post comments and, more importantly, suggest topics that you'd like us to address. You can see that we have some pretty amazing resources. So please let us know how we can help you on your upcoming digital transformation and enterprise IT projects. Thanks very much. Until next time.